The views and topics expressed by tonight's guest do not necessarily reflect the beliefs and/or opinions of Paranormal Road or our sponsors. We present tonight's topic for your consideration and review. Ultimately, each of us must decide for ourselves what we hold to be true. Exploring unknown regions of our reality.
And she looks out and sees these lights in the sky and these different patterns drifting like they were going to land.
Examining the depths of human perception.
I remember when I was awake and I realized I was awake, I started to sort of scan the room and I realized that something was wrong.
Pursuing the elusive and unseen.
Electronics started acting up, ceased to work, overheated.
You have just entered a road of wondrous mystery.
And so when we get around this bend in the road and this group of trees, we look up in the sky and there's this craft, and it is huge.
A place where sometimes our darkest terrors dwell.
I've never seen anything like this, and instantly I could feel the...
You've just turned on to the Paranormal Road. Paranormal Road.
And welcome to the Paranormal Road. I'm Dave Hensley, your host.
And I'm Randy Kessler, your co-host.
Tonight we have an exciting show. Oh, wait a minute. Let's face it. All of our shows are exciting. At least I think so. What do you think, Randy?
I think we have some wonderful guests.
Yes, we do. And tonight is no exception. Her name is Lisa Scholz, and she is just amazing. She is a psychic medium extraordinaire. I mean, she's just incredible. And I had the actual pleasure of being on her show. Now, she has her own YouTube channel, and it's Lisa Scholz, medium, psychic medium. And she has some really interesting guests, so we encourage you to check that out. I'm excited for tonight's show. Because, first of all, when I was on her show, her personality is just amazing. I mean, I connected with her as if I've known her my entire life. And she's so easy to talk to, and she has such really incredible insight. So I'm excited about tonight's show because I'd like Randy to meet her and talk with her. Because he is the gifted one. I'm the
editor.
The editor. Yeah.
He's the one that makes all this sound good.
Yeah, well, sometimes. But so I'm really excited about Randy being able to talk with her and relate his gifts with hers and see where there's commonality or where maybe she can help him understand some things because Lord knows he could use it.
I'm excited to meet her. I've looked at her website, which is an incredible website, very inspirational. And I get a little nervous talking to other mediums, but I think she's going to be good to talk with. I really, want to listen and ask a few questions.
Yeah, she's just, like I said, awesome. So we want to get this show on the road, but first, it has been a hotbed of UFO sightings in Ohio this past month. And we have a Haddox report, and William's going to talk about 4 cases, which is really, in recent times, that's a lot for him to be getting all at one time.
And now, professional UFO investigator on special assignment with Paranormal Road, it's William Haddox with the Haddox Report.
This is William Haddox bringing you another episode of the Haddox Report. And this week I would like to bring to you 4 new cases that were recently submitted to the reporting center, which can be found at Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center.us. And if you would scroll to the bottom of the homepage, you will see a YouTube icon. Click that and we'll take you to my YouTube channel, where I will have a compilation video that goes into more detail of each one of these events I have video and photographic evidence from each individual report. To start off was November the 8th in Ada, Ohio, which is south of Toledo. It was a fireball-like object. It looked to me like a flare that I have seen many military aircraft drop over the years. It lasted about 30 seconds in duration. Looking north is the direction. So I checked with all the usual sources that I do, military bases and things, and found out there was nothing in the air that night, and they do not train at all in that area anyhow. So I'm kind of back to square one as far as that goes, but I'm still definitely actively investigating. The next images that were sent in were southeast Brown County, Ohio, at 5:30 in the morning on the 3rd of October. And these were off of a trail camera, about 50 to 100 yards away, which were farther than the camera should be able to pick up anything. And it looks like a streak across the, low to the ground, but just a streak. And I'm thinking that it was a fast-moving object of some sort. I have sent the images to the company that produced the camera. I haven't heard anything back, but once I do, then I will update that one further. The next was from 10/22/2020 at 10 o'clock in the evening over Germantown, Ohio, south of Dayton. An orb or disc-shaped object was seen, and I have this one on the video. The witness says that him and his wife see these objects every time they go outside. Now, you have to keep in mind, being around Dayton, that's a military airspace and a large city on top of that. So there's a lot of aircraft in the air at all times anyway, but still actively investigating that one. And the last that I want to bring to you is from Fredericktown, Ohio. And this was on August the 31st. It lasted for about 3 minutes, and I have several photos, which will be in the video. And it looks like a disc-shaped object in the clouds. Like I said, it lasted for about 3 minutes. No noise or anything. Could have been a possible cloud formation, a small cloud formation. I'm still checking weather reports and things to try to see what information I can uncover, but nothing as of yet. So if you would go over to my YouTube channel, which can be found, like I said, at the bottom of the homepage of the website, Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center.us, or the same name on YouTube. And if you've got any idea what you think these things could be, feel free to put a comment underneath the video, and we'll see where we can go from there. Now, something I wanted to bring to you this week that's a little different, something I haven't done before, but thought would be fun. We're getting close to Thanksgiving, so there's always a lot of, talk around the Pilgrims and Plymouth Rock and things of that sort. Well, this was about 19 years after that, but still the same group of people. And this was the first reported UFO sighting in the New World. This was in an area which is known as the Bridgewater Triangle, is what it became to be known, which is about a 200-mile triangle, 200 square miles, in southeastern Massachusetts. It's known for all sorts of paranormal activity, from animal mutilations, Bigfoot sightings, Thunderbird sightings, giant pterodactyl-like creature, lots of Native American curses. There's a large swamp in the center of it, Hammock Swamp, which actually means the places where spirits dwell. So it's a very active place for, a lot of people. Now, the case that I want to bring, which I think is interesting, one that I've looked at several times, this was back in 1639. So obviously no aircraft or anything of that sort at that time. Now, this is a second-hand observation, but so you got to take that with a grain of salt, but at the same time, very interesting. It was dated March the 1st The gentleman that took the sighting was named Winthrop, and he wrote that a sober, discreet man named James Everell was rowing his boat up Muddy River that night, and he saw a great light in the sky. He said it stood still, flamed up, and was about 3 square yards when it ran. So, seems a little odd. I mean, could have been a meteor, but still seems very odd. It ran as swift as an arrow toward Charlestown, so up and down about 2 or 3 hours, it says. By the time the light moved away, which seemed to be a very quick event, Everell and his boatmates were 1 mile upstream, but they had no idea whatsoever how they actually got there. So, and when it was also documented that when the object took off, it was into the shape or the figure of a swine. So that was the first report ever brought in, ever into the New World. And it was very interesting, to say the least. And John Winthrop, that took the report, he was the governor. He was the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony there. So, it sounds like at first that it could have been a meteor or some other, astronomy type object, astrological type. But what made it interesting was being delivered 1 mile upstream. And in a downstream, you can understand currents can carry you quite a ways. But to go upstream, you have to fight the current. Even if the water is fairly still, I've done a little boating even on just some small lakes. And even when the water is very still, there's still a difference. There's always a current. It might be under the water and you don't notice, but there's always a current you have to fight if you want to go upstream. So to go for 1 mile and for nobody to have any recollection of how they got there, I find that quite interesting, to say the least. And since then, up until present day, there have been more different UFO and paranormal type sightings in that area than you could, ever think to count. It's just a very active spot. And like other similar areas around the world, nobody really has an idea of why these different events concentrate into a defined area, but they tend to. So that's what I've got for this week, and I would definitely like some feedback if possible. There's a few different ways you can contact me. You can go to my website again, which is Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center.us. You can either fill out a report if you have one. You can click the link above. It'll say to submit a new report. If you want to leave me a comment, you can do that at the bottom of the homepage. And also my email address is there as well. And you can also go on Facebook to Paranormal Road and send them a comment, and they can relay it to me, and I'll do my best to answer it, in a timely manner. So, thanks again for all the support from all of the listeners. 2020 has definitely been a wild ride for everybody, not just in the UFO community. So hopefully we'll have definitely a better 2021, but we'll see. And as always, keep looking up.
Thanks, William, for that Haddox report. Now, what's really interesting, you brought up that story as far as early reports of UFOs in Massachusetts. Now, what's really interesting is next week's show. Folks, you're not going to want to miss next week's show. If you haven't heard anything about the Bridgewater Triangle, this is a show for you because it's very similar to the Skinwalker Ranch. UFOs have been reported from this triangle area, 200 square miles in Massachusetts, for years. This whole area is a hotbed for UFOs, orbs, Bigfoot, Dogman, hauntings, Puckwudgies, which that's a strange name. If you haven't heard about the Puckwudgies, you're not going to want to miss next week's show because we have a special guest, James Michael Rice. He is a horror fictional writer, and he grew up in Bridgewater and the Bridgewater Triangle area in the Hockomock Swamp. And let me tell you, he has some really scary and some interesting stories that led to his imagination to become a horror writer. And these stories are kind of freaky. But that's next week, a special extended show of Paranormal Road with author James Michael Rice. But now it's time to move on to tonight's show with our special guest, Lisa Scholz. And Lisa, I'd like to welcome you to the show. I'm David.
And I'm Randy.
Hi, I'm Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Tell our audience a little secret. I was actually on Lisa's show. She has an incredible YouTube channel, just amazing. And man, Lisa, I swear it was like you and I were best friends, and we've known each other for the world. We just kept talking.
I know. It was great. It was great.
Yeah,
it was a great interview.
And I thought we had to have you on our show.
Everybody, especially nowadays, wants to know about passed on loved ones. And from what I can tell, you're the expert.
Yeah, so tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you ended up on this path.
Okay. Well, my name is Lisa Scholz, and I am a professional psychic medium. I'm also a energy healer utilizing something called Body Talk. And I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have been a medium my whole life, but I grew up in the 70s and the 80s before Google. So there was no, let me just type this into a search box and figure out what do I do with this, these abilities and these kind of things. And honestly, being a child, you don't realize that other people aren't having the same experience as you are. You just don't see it that way. You assume, people are having the same, experiences that you do. So I would say in my own, and everyone has a different story, but I saw my first spirit person when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And it was my grandfather who had passed away before I was born. And so I'll tell you a little bit about that story, but when I was around that age, one of my favorite little craft things that I had was this thick flaked purple glitter. I loved it. I loved it so much. I barely ever used any of it. I was very conservative about using this glitter because I just was so, enamored with it. Well, anyway, this one night I'm sleeping on the couch in the living room because back then it was fun for, my brothers and I to have like a camp out, in the living room. So I was by myself camping out on the couch that night. And I woke up in the middle of the night, woke up completely. And I just looked into the center of the room and I saw like my purple glitter kind of very slowly turning around. Like, how like the beginning of a tornado would be, but it was very slow and peaceful. So it was just kind of turning around and I was mesmerized by it. I'm just looking at this purple glitter like, wow. And out of the glitter forms my grandpa. And I knew it was him because I'd seen pictures of him before. And he's standing there in front of me. And I know he had passed away. He passed away 2 years before I was born. And I'm looking at him and he looks at me and he just smiled. He never said anything. He just smiled and he looked at me. And I'm, just dumbfounded staring at him. And he turns around and he kind of glides towards the front door and moves through it. And I said out loud, I said, Grandpa, go see Grandma. She misses you so much. And he was just gone. And then that was it. So that was my first visitation. I was not afraid. I want to emphasize that. And I really think, knowing what I know now from the spirit world, how they don't want to scare us, meaning our loved ones who have passed away. They don't want to scare us, even though sometimes when they show up, it can be startling.
Right.
But I really believe that my grandpa used that purple glitter to, in a way, introduce himself, in a way to put me at ease because I loved it so much. So that's what I think and I believe he had done for me that night. And having worked with spirit for years now, I just believe that to be true.
Oh, I think you're right. I mean, something that you felt comfortable with and something you liked, that's the way he would present himself.
Right. And I was just a kid too. I'm only 6 or 7. If he would have just showed up, like, boom, there he is, I would have screamed and been traumatized and, all of that. So,
Right.
So there was a very gentle introduction by him. And, it was just really beautiful when I look back on it. So that was my first experience with spirit. And then I would say, I don't really remember anything else happening until I was probably in my late teens, early 20s, like college years. I lived in a haunted house. I went away to school. I went to the University of Georgia, and I lived downtown. And I lived in a building that had been there since like the early 1800s, and they had converted it into apartments. But it had been many things prior to the apartments. And one of the things it was actually a Civil War hospital. And so living there with my roommate, and none of this stuff was on my radar back then either. We didn't move there because it was haunted.
Right.
Probably never would have if we would have known. But there we are, and living there, and we're having all of these unexplainable things happen. And so this is going to date me a little bit, but back in the day, do you guys remember word processors?
Oh, yeah.
So for those of you who don't know what those are, imagine a typewriter with a very small screen, and you type your paper up. That's what we would do. We type our papers up on this little tiny screen, and then you hit print, and then it would just print it out, right? So you have to feed the paper in, and you have to, like, when it's done printing, it's done, and then you have to pull it out. So anyway, we're just sitting in our living room one day. I'm just talking with my roommate, and we hear some woman screaming in the hallway, or like the hallway of the apartments. And we go outside, like, what is going on? And she's like, oh my God, my paper has just started pulling out of the word processor and flying across the room. And so that is how we ended up meeting our neighbors in that building. It wasn't just us having the paranormal experiences. It was everybody. So anyways, that's just a little bit of a background of like how I experienced some of the paranormal world. But it wasn't until much later that I became aware of energy and also mediumship, and that you could actually formally train in it. So that's a whole nother story. So fast forward to when I'm in my late 30s. Okay. And so I had an issue with someone, and I just couldn't shake it. Now, I've already gone to graduate school. I've been a therapist for many years. I know all about psychological stuff. I've got colleagues who are clinicians, and I had this issue with this woman in my life that I could not shake. When I would think about her, I would start to cry. I would literally start to cry, which is so out of my character. It really was. And I tried to psychoanalyze myself for, years. This really went on for a couple of years. It was very upsetting to me. I could not shift past it. And one of my girlfriends had said, you should go see so-and-so. She does body talk. And I said, well, what's that? What's body talk? And she said, it's like energy work. And I blew her off. I just didn't go. I was just like, I don't even know what it is. Well, anyways, I became so desperate because of a series of events that had happened that I thought, okay, what the heck? I'm just going to go make an appointment. So I make this appointment. I sit down. I start talking to her, this, body talk professional, and I tell her what's going on in my life. And she says, okay, well, let's start here. Da, 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 da. So she does this body talk session on me, which is basically you lay down on a massage table. You're fully clothed, but you start working on energy. Basically, your body has every organ, every cell, your legs, your limbs, your bones, all of it has an emotional piece connected to it. Like we store emotions at certain points in our body. And body talk, finds out where there's an imbalance or maybe a deficit or something that's clogged up, and it shifts it out and balances you up. Okay. So anyways, here I am getting this body talk, session done, and I feel extremely relaxed, which is not normal for me either, to just relax with someone I don't know. And so here I am, I have this session. I leave, go home, go to bed, wake up the next day, think about the situation that's been basically bothering me all these years. And I had absolutely no emotional reaction at all.
Wow.
It was gone. Absolutely gone. Now, I'm a clinician, and I've been doing talk therapy for over 20 years now. And I do believe in talk therapy. I do believe in it. But I have never had results like that. where one session would completely eliminate, anxiety or depression or whatever the symptom may be for someone. I couldn't believe it. So I went back, the next month I went back again and again and again, and my life started changing radically for the better for me. So that's how I started learning about energy. And I knew that energy was real at that point because it had such a profound change in my life. So what was really going on was I was having all these emotional reactions to this situation with this woman, but I also had the energy of it attached to me. Now, I had worked through the emotions, but because the energy was still lodged in my field, I couldn't release it. Once I was able to release the energy of it, I was free. I was completely free. It was amazing, the healing of it. So that's how I knew energy was real and that you could work with energy. Okay. So I don't know if you guys know who James Von Prague is. He is a professional psychic medium. He's very popular back in the 80s and 90s. He really brought, mediumship to the American public, through Larry King Live. Remember that show?
Right.
Oprah, all those kind of things. He was on there. Well, and he's written a bunch of books. So I had been following him off and on because I'd always been interested in mediumship and psychic and reincarnation and all that kind of stuff. And he was coming to do a workshop, a weekend workshop. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go. And it was all about energy. That's what it was. It was all about energy. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to learn about this some more. This is really fascinating. So I go to this workshop and there's probably at least 500-600 people in this workshop. So he made us all get up at some point. It was a weekend thing. We all had to get up and we had to walk around the room and then find someone who we'd never seen before, never talked to before. And that was going to be our partner. So I go, I find my partner. It's this lovely lady. We sit down. Everyone gets paired up and he says, okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to give them, your partner, a mediumship reading. And I thought, oh no, no way. I cannot do this. I mean, the amount of anxiety that washed over me, I can't even tell you. So, I'm like, oh my heart's like beating out of my chest. So he's like, okay, this is what you do. He gives us, tells us what we have to do. So I go ahead and I get into the little meditation thing and I go right into my left brain, which is all the logical side, right? Like doubt, all those kind of things. And I completely skim over the information I'm given and I create a story in my head and I tell my partner and I completely got it all wrong. It was completely wrong. And so about 15 seconds into this, it happened very quickly. James stops everybody. He's not near me, by the way. He hadn't heard anything I'd said. But he stops everybody. He goes, okay, I want everyone to start over. This time, don't think about the information. Just feel it. I'm like, okay. So I was like, all right. So I just shook it off and I go ahead and go back in and he's like, okay, go. So I go and I just felt the information and I said, I have a woman here, tells me she's your friend. She's been gone about 10 years and she passed of breast cancer. And my partner looks at me and she goes, yes. And I about fell out of my chair. I was like, oh my God, I just connected with someone in the spirit world and I communicated with them. It was amazing. And so I was completely stunned that I could do it, even though I'd had multiple paranormal psychic experiences in my life, in my 20s, my 30s. I just kind of wrote them all off. I didn't know that. I mean, what do you do with it? Like when you hear something or you just know information about somebody, or you see a spirit person, what do you do with it? I didn't know what to do with it. I just kind of dismissed it and kept moving on with my life.
I wish you could see Randy's face over here because he's like shaking his head. Yeah. I'm
yeah.
Like, yep, I can relate.
Exactly.
You know what I call those, Lisa? I call them oh shit moments.
They are. I mean, they really are.
It's like, oh my God, I got one right. Oh no, shit.
It's just, it's amazing. I was just blown away that it even happened to me, honestly, that it did. So from that moment, I decided, well, I'm going to see what I can learn about mediumship. I'm going to see how far I can take it. Never dreaming I would ever go public. Never dreaming I would ever be professional medium. I just wanted to see how much I could develop. And I thought I would just keep it to myself. Well, I did. James Von Prague ended up opening a school up. It's an online school. It's called the James Von Prague School of Mystical Arts. And he had, psychic classes. He's got a ton of classes on there if anyone's interested. But he also had mediumship level 1, level 2, and then eventually level 3. Well, I went through level 1 and then level 2. And when I got to level 2, what you had to do is you had to read for someone, videotape it, and submit it to him in order to be enrolled in his class, because he didn't just take anybody. And I thought, oh my God. So that's really what got me going with having to read for people. So of course I started with my friends and then friends of theirs who I did not know. I ended up getting into his course, and then in that course we had to do group readings. So that pushed me to do a group reading. And then, word of mouth started spreading. And before you know it, I was in level 3 with him. And, I had ended up creating this clientele of people who were coming to me by word of mouth. And so it just kept growing and growing and growing. And as my confidence grew, I eventually got a website, and I, eventually got business cards and really started to incorporate that into my business. So here I am several years later, and it's just been amazing. Mediumship has just changed my life for the better. It's just such a beautiful and miraculous experience. I just love it. I absolutely love it. It's a whole nother level of healing for people.
Now,
to hear from their loved ones.
Do you find your gifts or do you find yourself that you're still, I guess, evolving and growing in this gift?
Yes. And I really believe that everyone who's a medium will continue to grow and evolve until the day we pass away. There is no finish line. There's always more to learn. There's always a deeper level to hit. There's growth that will never end. So, I will be, taking courses and classes and different things, for the rest of my life. And it's all so fascinating. It's so fascinating. So yeah.
I found myself at times, and it's probably a bad thing, and you're the professional. I would get overwhelmed to the point that I would just almost shut down. It's like, I can't do this. I cannot deal with another spirit right now. It's affecting me more than it should. And so I'll go through periods of just, I can't do this. And typically it doesn't affect me as much when we do the paranormal investigations. But again, some of the cases we go on, I will connect with a spirit that is really having a rough time, and that then will put me on guard again. So I guess for me, I need to not just keep pushing it away, but just try to perfect what I'm doing with it, and not try to shut it down when it gets to me.
I mean, well, did you find that in the beginning, like Randy did? When you were doing this, especially with connecting with spirit, did you pick up on their emotions? Did it change, like, if you were come across an angry spirit, did it make you angry? Did it make you temperamental? Did you have these flood of emotions that you had to learn to control? Or is it different?
Well, I think that being a therapist, I have sat with emotions, for over 20 years from people here, the living.
Right.
And I've developed a lot of boundaries around it. In psychology, we call it transference and countertransference. So I've really learned, in my professional career, how to distance myself from someone else's stuff. That doesn't mean it doesn't affect me sometimes, but I'm able to identify it pretty quickly that it's not mine, that the emotion is not mine, and I know what to do with it. I know how to get rid of it. I also know how to protect myself from it. So I think it's a little easier for me being a medium because I come from that background, for me to have pretty good boundaries around what's my energy and what's another person's energy, even if they're not in the physical world anymore, and how to keep that away from me, and not to be overwhelmed by it. And, one of the things, too, that James has taught me and some of the other people I've trained with is the importance of energetic boundaries with the spirit world. That if you're not ready to work, if you are not ready to be communicating with them, then you don't. That they can't, reveal themselves to you. And when you are ready, then that is the time. But there's a time to turn it on and a time to turn it off. Because if you don't turn it off, you'll blow out your adrenals. You'll be completely bogged down, depressed, overwhelmed, like you can't deal with it. And that's not healthy for you or any medium.
You're talking about Randy.
I pretty much have taught this to myself. It was kind of a wreck in the beginning because I didn't know what to do. I thought I had instantly at my age gone nuts. And then I guess the weird part of the story would be I was just going crazy. All night long, spirits were bothering me. I couldn't sleep. I was just going crazy. And there was a local little festival. And Dave says to me there was a woman there selling stones, like all different types of stones and crystals. And he goes, you know what? Why don't you go up and see if she has something that can help you? And I was very reluctant because, it's not like I just wanted to go around telling everybody I see dead people.
Right.
So I walked up and the woman's husband comes up to me and I said, look, I have a situation and I need to find something that's going to calm me down. Immediately he says, let me get my wife. She does that. She knows exactly what you're going through. And she came over and talked to me and she's like giving me these stones. And she said, try black tourmaline and, you need your own space. You need your own time. Try salt baths, put the stones around your tub, go into almost a meditative state and draw boundaries.
Yep.
And when I started doing that, it worked for me.
Yeah.
So, that was kind of how I learned to take control. The other part, when Dave brought up emotions, the very first investigation where I figured out that something was going on and that I must be a medium, I walked into a total stranger's house after describing the entire house to Dave before we even got there. I walked into their living room and started crying like a baby.
It was embarrassing.
It was embarrassing for me. The client's looking at me like, what in the hell is going on? I'm bawling like a baby. And she says, what's wrong? Are you okay? And I said, I'm okay, but I don't think this is me crying.
Right.
And that's when I figured out that there was a spirit in the house of a girl, and she was so happy that I was there and could tell she was there, that her emotions were going through me.
Yeah.
And that was a very interesting day for me, to say the least. But
So, Lisa, you talk about on your website energy strands. Would that be what something like that Randy was connecting with the spirit through these energy? Or am I missing that?
Well, it could be. It also, Randy as a medium, it's more likely that his energy field was blending with the energy of the spirit that was in that house. Energy strands are a little bit different. You don't have to be psychic or a medium to experience an energy strand. We all do. We can have an energy cord or a strand that connects us to our friends, our parents, an ex, a neighbor, any kind of like emotional connection you have with someone, whether that's in the present or in the past, you have an energy strand with them. Some of the strands can be as thin as a spider web, and some of them can be as thick as a, thick rope. So it just depends. But sometimes what happens is energy goes between people through these strands as well. And sometimes, I'm sure you guys have heard the term, you need to cut the cords, right? You need to cut the cord. That's what it is. It's an energetic cord that sometimes we do need to cut if it's an unhealthy relationship from our past or whatnot, or if we feel drained by someone, like say you go to work and, you're feeling fine and you end up, at the coffee maker with a coworker, and all of a sudden you start to feel, You start to feel drained a little
Right.
bit after talking to this person or whatnot.
These are would these be what also we call psychic vampires?
Yeah, energy vampires.
Right.
It could be that too. And it comes through these strands. It can come that way. So sometimes like I said, we need to cut those cords if we feel that people are continuing to deplete us, even when we're no longer with them.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's, for me, I open up to it, and I have felt the emotions more than once. I've also been on, I tell Dave sometimes when we go on our investigations, I'm like, why is it all the tragic spirits come to me? There will be like someone dies in a horrible accident or suicide or a slow, painful death. And it's almost like, why do they hunt me down?
Yeah.
Or why do they connect
Lisa,
with me?
Do you have an answer for that? Why is it that, because there's another dear friend that we have, Phyllis Rupp. She's been on a few investigations with us, and she's a medium. And she would pick up very similar things as Randy, but, children seem to gravitate towards her more because she's very motherly and very warm. Do you find that certain mediums in a group of mediums that spirits connect with different mediums for different reasons? Or is it the energy of that medium?
It's both. It's both.
Okay.
I mean, Randy, to answer your question about why do the tragic ones, find me? Well, I would question, look at what you're doing, right? You're a paranormal investigator, meaning you guys are going out looking at a haunting. So it would be someone who's stuck or someone who's in distress. So that's pretty much who you're connecting with on these investigations. Whereas for me, I'm not a paranormal investigator. I'm meeting with a client privately to talk to, one of their loved ones who maybe did not pass tragically. Although I do connect with, some people who have, but it's just a different environment.
Makes sense.
To answer your question, Dave, yes, people in the spirit world will connect with different mediums, in different ways. I am a therapist, so I'm used to sitting with people's emotions. So when I give a reading, the emotions and the messages are very easy for me because that's what I am familiar with and comfortable with. I've been sitting with people for over 20 years. I know what depression feels like. I know what shame feels like. I know what joy feels like. It's like a strong muscle for me because it's what I do. I have a friend of mine who's a medium, but in her professional life, she's been a pharmacist for 30 years. So when she connects with people in the spirit world, she gets names very easily and she gets medical conditions very easily. Because what is she doing as a pharmacist? What's your name? Spell your name. Confirm your name. Right? And she tells me that she has people in the spirit world just show her the pills that they were on. And so she says, oh, I have a woman here whose name is Phyllis, and she was, she had a heart condition and she had da-da-da-da. Now, that's not my reference point. I couldn't look at a bunch of pills and know what they mean, but it's her reference point. So that's how she's able to connect uniquely with the spirit world. I'm able to connect more on the emotional level as well. And, Randy, if you haven't discovered yet how you connect, you certainly will, because each medium is unique. We can go to 5 different mediums. Those 5 mediums can each connect with the same loved one of yours in the spirit world, and we will all get different information about them because the spirit person has to connect through our field of references, our frame of references. Does that make sense?
It does.
Very much so.
And unfortunately, it's time for a break. We'll be right back with Lisa Scholz.
No more making excuses for my own shortcomings. It's time to take responsibility for me. Daughter of a king who's king of all kings. So, yeah, I've been top tier. Walking with my head held high in every stride I make. I took the long way here, my soul you can't take. No matter what you're saying, do my spirit can't break. Real self-love is kinda hard to fake. So love yourself, little girls and boys. Don't let this big bad world swallow up your joy. Cause they ain't give it to you, now that's God's work. Amazing things you will achieve when you put them first.
I can dance
I will achieve every single dream as long as I believe I can, and I will achieve every single dream as long as I believe I can, and I will achieve every single dream as long as I believe I can, and I will achieve every single dream as long as I believe. Confidence of a champ, cause I am that. Funny when I profess my dreams, people fell back. They all thought I was crazy. What crack you smoking? I think your vision's hazy. Girl, you must have fell and bumped your head. Did your mama drop you as a child? I think you lost your mind. Nah, ain't no loose screws here. You talking to a woman that moves with no fear. I wanted something different, so I did something different. I saw it, believed it, spoke to God, and achieved it. Yeah, this for every train ride that I ever had to cry to see my dreams thrive. So you wanna get in the mix of God's plan? Well, bless your heart, honey, good luck with that. If it's one thing I know, can't nobody stop my bag, cause what's meant for me, best believe I have. Don't ever let people tell you what you can do. Everything you need is already within you. Look to God who's alive, he makes things new. The blessings falling down, reach up and grab it. Reach up and grab it, reach up and grab it. Don't ever let people tell you what you can do. Everything you need is already within you. Look to God who's alive, he makes things new. The blessings falling down, reach up and grab it. Reach up and grab it, reach up and grab it. Don't ever let people tell you what you can do. Everything you need is already within you. Look to God who's alive, he makes things new. The blessings falling down, reach up and grab it. Reach up and grab it, reach up and grab it. Don't ever let people tell you what you can do. Everything you need is already within you. Look to God who's alive, he makes things new. The blessings falling down, reach up and grab it. Reach up and grab it, reach up and grab it. I can, and I will achieve every single dream as long as I believe I can, and I will achieve every single dream as long as I believe I can, and I will achieve every single dream as long as I believe I can, and I will achieve every single dream as long as
If you've had a trip down the paranormal road and would like to share your experience, a haunting, a Bigfoot encounter, dogman, or anything that's just downright creepy, email us at paranormalroadpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's paranormalroadpodcast@gmail.com.
I have another question too, and I guess it ties into it. I did a reading for a young lady at It's Your Journey. They asked me to come up and just spend the day and do random readings if someone came in, and I did. Mm-hmm. And the girl came in and she was, I could tell, bothered, and I said to her, you just lost a loved one, like, somewhat recently. And she said, yeah, it was like a month ago. And she said that it was her girlfriend who was coming home from a meeting, an AA meeting, because she was a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. And a car went left to center and hit her head on and killed her. Oh. So I connected with her loved one very well, I thought. Mm-hmm. I said, you are still participating in the meetings in her place, correct? And she said, yeah, I am. I said, and you're going to be a sponsor? She said, yes, I am. Mm-hmm. I said, she's very proud of you for that, for carrying on her legacy and doing what she felt so strongly about. Mm-hmm. So that went really well. Well, a couple of days later, I'm in my car and my phone rings and it's a young girl. And she says to me, I got your name from a friend. And I want to know if you can help me connect with my fiance who's in a coma in the hospital.
Mm.
And I said, well, I have never really done that. I don't know if I could or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, tell me a little bit about the situation. She says, my boyfriend was in an accident about a month ago. He was drunk and he went left to center and hit a car and killed the woman.
No.
That's not coincidence. There's no
And
way.
I said, who did you get my name from?
Uh-huh.
And it was not anybody from where I did the readings. It was from somebody completely on the opposite end of town that would have had nothing to do with It's Your Journey or anyone else. She had just gotten my name from somebody.
Wow.
And she said, he won't come out of the coma and the doctors don't know why. And immediately I said, because he's in severe guilt.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know whether to stay alive and suffer the consequences or pass and suffer the consequences.
Wow.
And
God.
that freaked me out so bad. How could that have happened? And I guess I'm asking you, how could that have happened? How could that coincidence have happened? Because it has never left me.
Well, I wouldn't even call that a coincidence. That is, a synchronicity.
Uh-huh.
That is beyond a coincidence. And I think that just shows you how intertwined we all are in this fabric of life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, even for me, all these years of doing mediumship, I still can be stunned by things like that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if anything, Randy, that gives you validation, does it not, of the spirit world?
It does.
How
it
they
does.
know. Yeah, they know everything that's going on.
Yeah,
Incredible.
Speaking of that, can you share with our audience some of your most profound readings? Without revealing client confidentiality, but maybe something that has struck you, or that it was one of, as Randy would say, one of those oh shit moments.
Oh gosh, it's hard to
nail just one.
Yeah, nail just one.
That happens to me too, when people will start saying, well, what did this do and how do you do that? And I start telling them different things and they're like, oh wow. Like they want you to just tell everything. It's like, I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, the first one that really comes to mind, and I just hold it so dear in my heart, is I read for a couple, and I brought through their son who had passed away, and he died when he was 1 year old. And so it was about 9 or 10 years after he had passed that we had our reading. And it was incredibly profound for all three of us, because the parents were kind of, I don't want to say they were skeptical, but they were open, but a little hesitant. They weren't like full on believers in mediumship, but they were definitely open. And they wanted to connect with their son. I knew nothing about them before, I read for them, and I immediately, connected in with their little boy. And so that, as you can imagine, and any parent could, how emotional this was. But one of the things in that reading that, and I feel like it changed me. I really do. I feel like it absolutely changed me. But one of the things that I thought was so incredible in this reading was the little boy told his mom that he could still feel her when she was hugging him, even though he was no longer in the physical. And so that was huge, because I thought, really, like afterwards, I'm processing it myself after we were finished with the reading. I'm like, really? People in the spirit world can still feel us? We can't feel them.
Right.
But he was saying, I can still feel you when you hug me. And he had also said to her that he brought up a specific stuffed animal that he knew that she would hug this stuffed animal of his. And he said that he was always trying to put his spirit, his energy into that stuffed animal so that she could feel him back.
Wow.
And she had no idea about any of that. And that was just, I mean, that blew me away hearing that, you know, that just blew me away. And I've read for that family one other time as well. And it was just so beautiful. I had another situation, where I was reading for this woman and, her father came through and who had passed away from an illness, and she was probably in her 50s or 60s at the time, maybe a little older. And, she had been in a previous marriage with an abuser. This man had abused her. And so in the reading, I'm telling her, I said, you know, your dad's showing me that you were in this relationship, you were in this marriage, and, you know, this man was abusive towards you. And your dad shows me that you would go into the back of the house, into this bedroom in the back of the house. And that's where you would go to get away from him when he was, you know, yelling at you or you know, acting out. She said, yes, that's true. And I said, your dad's showing me that he would stand at the doorway and try to stop your husband from coming in. And she said, oh my God. She goes, you know what? He never used to come in that room. She goes, that's why I would go there, because he would just leave me alone when I walked in there.
Wow.
So her
His energy,
father, yeah. And she had no clue. And so that blew me away too. I was like, oh my God. And that really was, you know, like I told you before about the little boy and feeling his mom's hug still. And then this, you know, woman saying her father was standing guard at the door trying to protect her. And I don't know to what extent he really could have, but maybe the husband had a sense of, I'm not going to go in there. I don't know. All I know is she said he would not come in that room. And then her father told me he would stand there. So that shows me how much the spirit world is interacting in our lives. You know, they interact with us. They don't just watch us. They try to interact with us as much as they can, you know. So that was pretty amazing too.
With that story, I have a question too. It's like, I'm sure I could go on and on for days with you. But have you ever felt pain from a spirit? Like, have they hurt you, or have you felt their pain?
Sometimes in a very subtle way. I will feel like, for example, pain in my head if there was like an aneurysm, or, you know, or I'll feel pain and tightness in my chest if there was a heart attack. So I will feel tightness around my throat if there was suffocation, or, you know, you know, a suicide or something like that. I will sometimes feel that, sensory experience of it. But I have also asked people in the spirit world to be very subtle with me about it. You know, I don't want to feel full on, you know, being, you know, experiencing physical death. That would be too much for me. And so I say, if you're going to use this as a way to communicate, just please be gentle. And they always are.
Yeah. And I guess I should practice that. There's been a couple of different times where I suffered quite a bit of pain. And one was from a suicide gunshot wound to the head. And there was a couple other times where there were addictions, pills, where I became nauseous.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah.
But I guess what kind of gave me a clue on that was I had done another reading at someone's house that we were doing an investigation. And there was a boy whose picture was on the wall, had nothing to do with why we were there, but instantly I connected with him. And he had been killed in a car accident, but he was being chased by the police. He was running from the police, and immediately I was him. I was in the car, driving the car, going at a very high rate of speed. And I could feel his emotion. I could feel his terror. And he's, you know, of course, he's dropped the F-bomb, and it was, this is it. I can't get out of it this time, because he'd been in trouble before. And I could see this brick wall, and I knew the car was speeding. And I knew at that moment that if I did not shake myself out of that and get away from it, that I was going to feel that collision.
Right.
And I did. And I was actually pretty proud of myself for knowing that I was going to feel, you know, a brick wall in my face if I didn't stop.
Yep. Absolutely. And when those kind of things happen, because sometimes we will start to see things through the spirit person's eyes, before they pass or in their life or whatever it may be. And if you're ever in a situation like that where it's traumatic and very, terrifying, you can say, I want out. I just want to watch it. I don't want to experience it. I just want to see it. I don't want to experience it. And you will come out, so it's an energetic boundary as well. You communicating with the spirit realm about how you are willing to accept information from them.
That's awesome information.
Now, Lisa, I noticed on your website, you said that, I'm thinking here without pulling up your website, but every medium is psychic, but not every psychic is a medium. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So psychic information is when we just know something, like I might tap into you, Dave, and know something about you.
Right.
That's just psychic information. When you're in psychic, a lot of psychics, they will do tarot cards or oracle cards or, numerology, those type of divination tools, which is always interesting, but they're talking about you. They're talking about you, the client who's coming and like what's maybe potentially going to happen in your future. Okay. When a medium is someone who is able to connect with someone who passed away and bring through evidence of their life, who they were, maybe what their birthday was, what they did for a living, what their personality was like, hobbies they had, were they in the military, all those kind of information, and whatever messages they have. So not every psychic can do that, but every medium has psychic abilities.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
It does. It does make sense. It makes sense to me because that happens sometimes, when you might be reading someone as a medium and you sort of start to, for me, you kind of go off a different road a little bit like, well, this is something that you might want to know. And that's happened to me before. Not a lot, but it has happened. And sometimes I get the right, response. But, it is. It's true. I believe it.
Yeah. Psychic information can come up in a mediumship session as well. Of course, it can. That's typically not what the person's coming there for, but it can come up. And sometimes it's even people in the spirit world, telling, your client, this is what may happen for you. It could be, coming from them as well.
Now, can you, tell us a little bit about guides and angels?
Yeah. So
and how do you communicate with guides, be it yours or your clients?
Right. So I connect with my guides through different meditations. And I want to know, one of the things when I was in training as a medium was getting to know your spirit team, which is your guides, and who they are. And so I spent a lot of time working with them because they are the ones who really help to facilitate mediumship for me. They're the ones who can speak with the people in the spirit realm beforehand or help them to communicate with me, because not every person in the spirit world knows how to connect with a medium. So sometimes my guides will be helping them to be able to communicate with me. If that makes sense. So our guides are people who typically have lived on Earth before. It could be someone we know, or it could be people we never met before. And they help us. We have many guides in our life. We have a relationship guide. We have a guide for our career, maybe multiple guides for our career, depending on what phase we're in, or if we change jobs. We've got finance guides. We have all kinds of guides who come through and help and support us. And then there's the angels that we have. And so angels are always accessible to all of us as well. Angels are ethereal beings that have never incarnated as a human. They are at a much higher vibration, energetic vibration. And so they are people who are not necessarily specific to us. I mean, we each have a guardian angel, but then there's other angels. And I don't know if you guys were raised Catholic. I was, but the archangels we hear about is Michael and Gabriel and all that, which anybody can access. Anybody can call on them to help you. Your guides are more personal, assigned, specific to you.
Now, do you communicate with your guides as far as in a meditative state, or if you're doing a client interview, do your guides come through to you, or do their guides come through to you?
I always whenever I do a mediumship reading before I sit down with my client, I ask my guides to come in and do what they need to do in order to support the session and make it successful. That's what I ask them to do. Then I don't really notice them during the mediumship session because I'm just connecting in with the loved one of my client. And I feel like that's a direct connection. It's just direct between me and them, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I can pick up on the guides of a client, but I don't, typically give guide readings. I know a lot of people do. A lot of psychics will talk about, let me tap into your guides. That's just not something that I, prefer to do. Mm-hmm. I like getting the validation from a loved one who passed away. I like connecting in, doing more of the mediumship piece.
And that would be evidential mediumship.
Yes, evidential mediumship. Like, I have your father here. He passed of a heart attack. Mm-hmm. His birthday was in March. He was an engineer. And then start talking about what messages he has for his daughter or whomever it is that is sitting in front of me. And I feel like that's my biggest way to serve the spirit world, is they no longer have a voice. So if I can give them a voice, then that is just, it doesn't get any better than that as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. That's such a privilege for me and an honor for me to be able to do that. So that's really where my biggest interest is, is mediumship.
When you get into this field, you with mediumship and Randy, I don't consider myself a medium, but, I guess we are in a sense of mediumship is communicating with the dead, but I do it through, transcription of ITC and EVP. So maybe it's just a different type of mediumship, but, nonetheless, we're communicating with the other side. But when you get into this, the beauty is astounding. It is and it changes who you are at the very core and fabric of your being.
Absolutely.
And I do, and I understand. Sometimes Randy, he'd say, I don't know why they call this a gift. It's not a gift. But it is a gift as far as I'm concerned. But I haven't had to have the jabbing pains that he had to feel. But then again, like you said, we're going in and doing investigations at places that have very traumatized energy.
Right.
So he would pick up on that.
Right.
And,
when we do lectures from time to time, people on our team, we all kind of say what we do and what our, forte is in the team. And it always seems like when I'm up there, everybody starts drilling me. And I tell people that I think everybody has senses and can tell if they're spirit and things like that, because our bodies are so amazing. Mm-hmm. It's like telling people, if somebody asks you to do something and you know it's the wrong thing and you've got that horrible gut feeling that it's going to go wrong, you're probably right. So follow your gut feeling.
Right.
And
that's your intuition.
Yeah. And our bodies are telling you something because they're so amazing. Mm-hmm. And it's held true for me through my entire life. I've had situations like, oh, no, that's not going to be good. I'm not going to do that.
Is that your body or is that your guide, Randy?
Well, it could be both.
Well, I think that we tend to dismiss our intuition, don't we? Mm-hmm. Even sometimes if we get a bit, I'm not necessarily saying, you guys, because you're more in tune with these things, but I think on average, a lot of people will dismiss maybe I got a bad feeling about going to this place. Well, that's all right. I'll just go. Right. It's nothing. Mm-hmm. It's nothing. I'll just go. Well, you're ignoring your intuition. Right. And, I say we all are intuitive people and we all have psychic abilities to one extent or another. Some of us are more developed than others. And it's kind of like having I explained it this way. It's like having a little invisible antenna on the top of your head. And some people have a very short antenna. And then there's the psychic, intuitive people whose antenna might be taller, And then people like me who's a medium, my antenna is more like a satellite. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and you can grow your antenna, to different degrees. So it's kind of like, we can all play piano, we can all learn, but maybe we're not all going to be Mozart, right? So it's the same thing with your psychic ability. We all have it, and it's that intuition, psychic ability. It's just some of us may not ever become mediums, right?
I tell you, time just flew. I cannot believe how fast this show went because it's so interesting. It's awesome.
I know. I love it when we have shows where you just want to talk and talk and talk.
Yes.
Now, Lisa, do you do readings by phone? Because we have a worldwide audience.
Yes, I do. Phone readings are also Zoom readings are wonderful as well. And it makes no difference in my ability to be able to connect with your loved one, whether you are sitting, physically in front of me or, we're on a Zoom call. So it makes no difference.
How can our listeners get in touch with you and find out more about you?
So you can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook at Medium Lisa Scholz, SCHOLZ. I'm also on Instagram at medium_Lisa. I have a YouTube channel called Medium Lisa Scholz, which has a whole bunch of interviews, including mine with Dave. And my website is www.mediumlisascholz.com.
And for those of you listening to our podcast version of this, we will put those into the show notes. So you can click on those links from the show notes and go directly to get to be able to find out more about Lisa.
Lisa, this was just an amazing show for me. You've given me motivation now to open up a little more and start investigating what I do a little more and get more active.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for having me on this podcast. It's really been wonderful. And I love talking to you, Dave, and Randy. It was so great to meet you. So
it was
thank
awesome
you
talking
so much.
with you.
That's one of the blessings of doing this show is, so many of our guests, we feel that we become very good friends with, and we count you one of them.
Absolutely.
Oh, wonderful. I feel the same. Thank you so much.
Okay, Randy, be honest now. Did she live up to my hype?
Absolutely. I just really adore talking to her. She's just amazing. She is so knowledgeable.
Yes, she is, and so easy to talk to. And she has some really good stories and really good insights into communicating. And I think, again, for those who are suffering from the loss of a loved one, as I have, as Randy have, and so many of our listeners, they are around you. They're there all the time. And Randy can speak on that as being true because, again, he is the gifted, he is the medium on EVP Mediums.
And talking to her, I think, is going to help me because a lot of what I do is on our paranormal investigations. And that's not really her gig. So I'm interested to find out a little bit more about how to handle the mediumship side of it.
Yeah, because, and I think she made perfect sense of why you would feel more pain, why you would have these things, because, again, your gifts are being activated in a haunting, in many of our cases, a lot of tragic hauntings. So you would pick up on those emotions. So,
and her being a therapist too.
Yeah.
I mean, she makes total sense about, understanding feelings and emotions, and that means a lot.
So please check out Lisa's website, her YouTube channel, Facebook. All of those links can be found in our show notes, so we try to make it easy for you folks. So all you have to do is go to our show notes and click on those links, and it'll take you right to Lisa Scholz and information about her and how you can get in touch with her.
And she's an absolute must.
Yes, she is.
You have to go and listen to her, and you have to pay attention to what she does.
And we'd encourage you to get a reading from her. Again, she can do this by phone, Zoom, Skype, many different ways. Also, again, we're going to lecture you a little bit. If you enjoy Paranormal Road, please, please, please give us a rating and review. In order for us to be able to continue this show, we need to reach a larger audience. So the only way we can do that is by you sharing with your friends.
So just always hit like and share. And if you have any comments or anything that you want to share with us, please feel free. We love comments. We like stories. Send us your stories and we'll read it on the air.
Yep. All of those things keep us encouraged and motivated to keep this show coming. Check out next week's Paranormal Road with author James Rice. And again, we want to thank you for joining us on
The Paranormal Road.